In this video, we will be discussing about shadows. This is John, and welcome to codepen. So basically, before I get into coding or web designing, I was a graphic designer at first. I become obsessed with graphic design when I was in college, mainly because I was playing with Photoshop when I was part of the newspaper or the college newspaper. And when I got to the corporate world, I started tweaking images for clients because I generally started as a generalist virtual assistant at that time. So yeah, and then I learned HTML. So why am I bringing this up? Because I want to emphasize that from the graphic designer's perspective, going into the web designer perspective or a front-end developer perspective, I used to go back and forth within Photoshop and HTML and Photoshop and HTML, doing some effects or tweaks like shadows or changing colors, changing hues, changing images from black to white. Nowadays, the technology have allowed us to become more independent, not relying on graphic design anymore, but more on doing the effects that we aim to do or we want to achieve using just plain HTML and CSS codes. And right now, I'll be doing or will be doing one of it, which is creating shadows for text and for images. So yeah, let's deep dive into it, and yeah, join me on this video. So okay, so here we are, codepen. I've already started some HTML here. Basically, I created three sections with different content. The first section has an H1 because we will be creating text shadows here on the text. The second one, we have a JPEG image, which is here, this one. We will try to create a back shadow there. And the third one is there we go, a PNG, a PNG file, because we will try to create a filter shadow on that specific spot. Those are all shadows, and they all share a different kind of values, so we'll be tackling every one of them. So here, let me hide this HTML first so we can see the CSS. I bumped the font size up a bit, zoom in so we can all clearly see the codes that we'll be creating. So the first one that we will have to work on is the text. Okay, so in creating the shadow for the text, we can use text shadow. So for text shadow, we have four values. The first value would be the horizontal offset, which is the X or the placement of the shadow in the X-axis. So let's say we have it at 3 pixels. The second one would be the vertical offset, which is the Y value, the 3 pixels by 3 pixels. And then the third one would be how blur the shadow would be. So let's set the blurriness 5 pixels. So if you can see clearly, we're starting to see some shadows here, but it's black because by default shadows is set as black. So we can change the color to something like, no, not the same color as the background. Let's choose something, the starter, which is, let's place it with this one. There we go. So you can see the color change because we set the color here. So that's basically how back shadows or text shadows work. That's basically how text shadows work. You need to specify how far it is from the center to the left or right. You can use the negative values. Same with the y-axis, negative values to go up and positive values to go down. So let's try negative values to show you how it works. It goes up. So basing on how you want the text or the light source to be casted on the text. So if the light source is on the bottom, then the shadows on top. You get what I mean. Okay, so let's say something neat. Let's change that font text color to same color as the background. I'm sorry. Cool. So let's pump this up a bit to say 10. See. So we have created something more look like a 3D effect. But yeah, basically you can create more shadows. Just separate them with comma. So let's try to put this to here and here. So we have a second set, and just change the color a bit to something more cooler. So here we go. So looks cool, right? So you can play around with text and text shadows, basically adding shadows and shadows. You can have multiple shadows at once. Just separate them with a comma. So we go to the next one, which is the image. For the image, we'll go here. So the image works the same thing, but this time we'll be using, instead of text, we'll be using box shadows because the image is set as a box. So box shadow. So same thing here. We'll have to set the values for the X, values for the Y, and its blurriness. So you can see it has a shadow now, 10 pixels left, or 10 pixels to the right, 10 pixels down, and then 10 pixels blurriness. Let's pump up the blurriness to 30. So there we go. Create a more subtle effect. We can change the color to somewhat similar to, or a darker shade of purple, since we'll be using purple here. So it would complement either the light or the background. So yeah, but there's another cool thing about box shadow is it has an extra value which is optional, called, it's called again, the spread radius. So spread radius means that how big will it spread. So let me show you. So if we add another 10 pixels here, the spread would be constrained into 10 pixels. Okay, so even though we pump up the blurriness thicker, say 50, it will constrain, see, it will constrain the value or the spread into a certain how do you call this, certain radius, which is what we set into 10 pixels. Without that, we will have some more subtle effect. Here it is with it. We're trying to constrain it into 10 pixels. Here it is, sorry, and here it is without. There. So why do I want to add spread radius? Because creating a spread radius allows you to create more cooler effects. Because right now we have it on the offset outside of the box. But what if you want it to be constrained inside? Or what do you mean inside? I'll show you na lang. sorry guys, I'm not really good at explaining. I'm just good at showing you guys what I mean. So here, since we set it at a negative number, we can make the shadow smaller than the item itself, as if the item is floating out of the or closing near the light source. So, see that effect? See? It's pretty neat to be added as a hover effect. Let me show you. And hover, which is let's set this to but you get what I mean, right? It's something this cool to work with shadows. I will be sharing more effects. I think you guys saw them. There we go. There are more effects that you can work with box shadow with. You can see in codepen, which more like something like this. Those are subtle effects, more like paper effects on the boxes. You see that? And it's all utilizing box shadows, which is pretty neat. See? And yeah, last but not the least is the PNG. And now, since we have this box shadow and we have this text shadow here, we'd want to create here another effect called, but since you're thinking that this is an image, you might think that we would use another box shadow here. But the thing is, if we use box shadow, let's say we use box shadow, you can see that it constrains the image. Let's make the max width of the image. Max width of the image to around. See, it constrains the shadow of the image into the box because everything in HTML is box. So when we set it as box shadow, we will be achieving some box effects, shadow effects, and that is not what we want in this type of image. So for that to happen, we will use the value called CSS tricks that I learned, which is the filter. In the filter, we will use drop shadow, and then same thing with how we define shadows on the previous examples that we have. We will be setting it as 10 pixels for X, 10 pixels for Y, and 30 pixels for the blurriness. And let's set it for a darker shade of purple. Oh, let's pick some darker shade of blue. There. So instead of setting it as a box, it uses or it filters the image itself, trace the shape, and create shadow out of the exact shape of the image instead of following the box. Let's reduce the blurriness to 10 so you can clearly see how it works. See? So it's more realistic approach into working with shapes. But we're not working with CSS shapes here, we're working with a specific PNG image file, which is neat, right? So yeah, I think that's about it. We covered text shadows, we covered image shadows, and we covered some interesting filter, CSS filter shadows. And then again, this is John. Thanks for watching and see you on the next video.